Guy is a Zurich-based author and investor. Everybody on this forum knows that Guy. We've all bought your books, and they're now actually in slow delivery from Amazon. And Guy completes MBA at the Harvard Business School, class of 1993, and holds a first-class degree in politics, philosophy, and economics from Oxford University, where he studied at the Brasenose College with the Prime Minister of Britain, former Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron. He also is the co-founder of Aquamarine Fund, a Switzerland-based investment partnership started in 1997. The fund follows a value investing strategy focused on long-term investments in undervalued companies with strong fundamentals. Guy's investment philosophy is heavily influenced by the teachings of Warren Buffett and his partner, Charlie Munger. And that's exactly the tenets that we also follow, Guy, at our forum. One of the most defining moments in Guy's career was his decision to bid over $650,000 with his friend Monsoon Pabrai in a charity auction in 2008 to have lunch with Warren Buffett. That's actually legendary what you could achieve. He's a sought-after speaker and has been featured in various media outlets, sharing his insights on investing, entrepreneurship, and personal development. He continues to inspire and educate investors around the world through his writing, speeches, and investment activities. We're truly, truly blessed to have you on our forum, Guy. Welcome.
Thank you, Namita. I'd like to meet that guy. He sounds pretty interesting.
We have the pleasure of meeting him today. And I'll also take this opportunity to introduce Monsoon. Thank you for getting her on the forum, Guy. Monsoon is the managing partner and portfolio manager of Drew Investment Management, founded in 2021. Drew Investment Manager manages investment partnerships modeled after the original Buffett partnerships. Monsoon was an investment analyst on the India team at Dalton for 2 years and is a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley. And like she was just telling us, she's doing, and what Guy was saying, she's doing a brilliant job at Dakshina. Welcome to our forum, Monsoon. And just a little bit about our organization as well. Millennium Mams is a nonprofit organization founded by our mentors, Mr. Bishu Dhanuka and Mr. Sanjay Bhavania. 30 years back, a forum designed to empower women through financial literacy. It's a unique platform that has touched the lives of over 10,000 women, helping them to gain financial independence. Many of the women here are successful investors in the capital markets. And like I was talking about you before, the teachings are based on the tenets of long-term investing. Yes, yay. As espoused by the legendary investor, Mr. Warren Buffett. And here at Millennium Mams, we believe that learning is a continuous process. And in order to make better investment decisions, we study annual reports, attend analyst meetings, AGMs, conduct factory visits. On a regular basis, we meet industry experts and heads of large corporations to understand better in terms of industry, as well as macro and micro trends. In 2019, we actually had the pleasure of visiting Omaha, where we attended the AGM of Berkshire Hathaway, and that was a fantastic experience, and we hope to replicate that sometime again in the future. And Millennium Mams has spread its wings across the country. We're now present in over 18 states and 14 countries. We have strong chapters in Bangalore and Mumbai. And currently, in our 30th year, we have over 700 active women who are part of this organization, and we continue to grow from strength to strength. So once again, welcome to our forum, and I'd like to hand it over to Meghna.
Thank you, Namita. It is Guy and Monsoon. It is such an honor for us to have both of you at our forum today. Before I start our discussions, Guy, I would like to tell you that your book, The Education of a Value Investor, is truly inspiring, and it is one of the best and most extraordinarily candid books I have read, not just on investing wisdom, but also for the invaluable life lessons that it imparts. And it gives me great pleasure to let you know that all of us here have read your book. and we would love to have a quick picture taken with you along with our copies. So requesting all the members to hold up your book so we can have a nice picture with the author himself.
Now, should I get my copy as well?
Well,
No,
Guy,
hold on a
really,
second. Wait,
sure,
that's a
sure.
great idea.
Yes,
Meghna,
sure.
but
Yes.
just to make it even more genuine, you know,
Yes.
I walked past a photo, one of the holiday cards that Warren Buffett sent me. So why don't I hold up something that makes it even more authentic? Bear with me, I'll just pick it up. I think it could work pretty well. Hold on.
Wonderful, Guy.
So, you know, you guys hold up copies of my book. I hold copies of me and Warren Buffett. So does that work
Wonderful.
like that?
Absolutely, Guy. Splendid idea.
Good.
Shraddha, is it done? Just let us know.
And what's great about this is that I know that Warren will be so happy to know that his photograph is pride of place in my office. And he'll also be really happy to know that I held it up for you guys and that you were taking photographs of my book with him. So it's all fun. It's all kind of, you know, so.
It's perfect.
Yes,
Thank you
it's
so
done.
much, Guy. Thank you.
It's
Yeah,
done.
all good.
Thank you. So we have many questions that we would love the both of you to answer. I will start with the first one, and then I'll get the other members to come for it. And so starting with the first question, we would love to hear about the coveted charity lunch you all had with Warren Buffett in 2008. Can you please share the key learnings from that memorable interaction?
Well, Monsoon, would you allow me to go first? Is that okay?
Please, all of these, you go first.
Well, the great benefit of asking that question is that you have two people who were there. And, you know, Monsoon and I met the night before with her dad and her sister at a place called Cafe Lalo's on the upper west side of New York. But before I go there, first of all, thank you so much for having me and Monsoon as well. It's a real privilege to talk to all of you. And I'm slightly nervous because I don't know all of you well enough, and I haven't spent enough time getting to know what I hope that, you know, if I give answers that are not directed to where you're at, please reprimand me and make sure that I get to the correct or the answer that's valuable. I also want to really, really thank you, Monsoon, because I can't imagine doing this call without you. And you provide this incredibly beautiful bridge between you know, Millennium Mams and the world of investing and Warren Buffett and your father, Monsoon Pabrai, and an Indian American, an American Indian, a confused Desai, all of those different things. So I just want you to know that it's an incredible privilege to be here with all of you. And now to actually try and answer your question. This is all just the warm-up act for you, Monsoon. I just want you to know that.
No.
So what? I think that, you know, obviously we can dive into more and you'll redirect me, but the two things that stand out for me for this group right now, and we'll see where Monsoon goes, is that, you know, I sent a bio of myself and my wife to Warren beforehand. And I was so nervous that I'd kind of gotten sick before the meeting because I wasn't sleeping well. I was afraid he wouldn't like me, all sorts of things. So we meet him and he's read the bios. And I'm expecting him to ask me about what I think is a very interesting background, growing up in Israel, born in South Africa, living in Iran for a certain period of time. And that was like straight over his head. He went straight to my wife, who was born in Salisbury, North Carolina. And he wanted to talk to her about her life in Salisbury because he had a very good friend. And it just kind of showed a guy who at his heart is really, really very simple. And he wasn't really very interested in my exotic background, which was kind of really fascinating for me. And then I just remember my wife, Laurie, who was there at the end, towards the end, saying, he's just like another grandfather, you know, he's something like that. So I'll stop there. We can obviously dive into wisdom that he shared and other things, but I'll let Monsoon give her perspective. Monsoon, it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining me on this.
No, I was so excited when Guy's office reached out so that if I could join the call, and I knew about Millennium Mams. I didn't know there were this many women that were a part of it. So my heart is extra warm, and I'm even more excited to be here. But in terms of the Buffett lunch, I was 12 at the lunch, so I remember most things. But I agree with Guy. What I remember most is that Buffett had no air to him. He really just felt like a Dadaji or Nanaji. And he brought canned M&Ms with his face on them for my sister and I. And my dad begged us not to eat them, and we had every single one. They were polished off. And the advice he gave, and I think probably because Momachi, my sister and I were both young women at that time, is that the most important decision you make is who you marry. And I think it goes like who you marry, or if you choose not to marry, in terms of your whole life, of where you go to school, what job you take, and everything. The partner you pick is the most important decision. So that's what he had told us then.
Yeah. I'll stop there. I want to see the reaction, because I want to make sure I'm actually, you know, I'm sitting in my office in Zurich, and you guys are spread across India. So we want to make sure we address where your interests go.
No, we are absolutely mesmerized. You know, it's like we can just dream of the kind of, you know, the experience that you all got to, the opportunity that you all got. So it's wonderful to hear it firsthand. And, you know, so was it transformational for both of you in any sense?
For me, in my case, you know, another part of that story is that Monsoon and Momachi sat either side of Warren, and at the beginning I was calling him Mr. Buffett, and I remember him saying, you know, Guy, to my left and to my right, Monsoon and Momachi are already calling me Warren. So why don't you start calling me Warren now? Because you're going to do it anyway by the end of the lunch. So you might as well start now. And so he had to do a little bit of work to attempt to put me at my ease. I don't know if I succeeded in getting there. Just one very brief, I don't know if you know the story, but Monsoon's mother, Harina, is I think she's vegetarian. I think she was vegetarian at the time. And the place where we had the lunch was a very, very famous steakhouse, which has some vegetarian options, not many. And we kind of toyed with the idea of suggesting to Warren that actually we go around the corner to a very well-known Indian restaurant called Bukhara. At the end of the day, we decided not to, but it was a choice. And for what it's worth, I just wanted to correct something. It was, you know, Monsoon's dad, Monish, was 2/3 of that very, very large sum of money that was bid. I was just 1/3 of it, so it wasn't quite the full amount that I bid myself. But yeah, so just to go to your question, I think that for me, it was transformative, and I can sort of demonstrate the ways in which it was transformative. The first thing was, all the way up to that point, I had been running this money with a kind of a 1 in 20 fee structure. And I didn't know who would be at the lunch other than me and Monish. I don't know if probably I knew that our families would be there, but of the guys with responsibility for running money, it was me, Monish, and Warren. And I really, really didn't want to be the only guy there who was charging his investors a management fee. And I had kind of like, I'd been Snow White, but drifted under the advice of lawyers and other people. I'd kind of acceded to their suggestion that I had to charge a management fee. And I really hated myself for having done that when I set up the fund 10 years prior. And I really used the upcoming launch. And, you know, we won the auction about a year before we actually had the launch. So I had time. And I insisted that we restructure the fees so that I would be not charging a management fee by the time I got to the launch. So I, in a way, used the launch in order to make some changes. And it was one of the first things that I wanted to blurt out to Warren as soon as I could was, you know, I did this thing in advance of the lunch, and I asked an associated question, which was, is it hard to do the right thing? Because I knew that was the right thing to do. And it was really hard for me to. I mean, I had lawyers who kind of didn't want to do it. And I asked him if it got any easier. And I just remember he paused and he said, well, a little. So that was transformative. Then at another point at the lunch, I kind of like, you know, sort of like confessional. I said, you know, I have this idea that I'm going to move to Zurich. What do you think? Because if he can tell me whether or not I should move to Zurich. But somehow in his response, I took that as his blessing. And so I may have moved to Zurich anyway, but I think that certainly his response helped me. So yeah, I think it was, and I can go into more depth, but I don't want to, I want to let Monsoon draw on her a 12-year-old's memory, you know, so go ahead, Monsoon.
Yeah, for me it was, I don't know, I can't say transformative. I was prepubescent. But if I look back at it now, I think even up till now, at every single charity lunch that Buffett has done, when someone wins the lunch, I don't think anyone has brought, I don't think anyone has brought their children. And it just kind of, you know, helped me reflect how much, how involved my parents were in having us involved in things. And every other investor had kids. I think Guy's kids were really small, like 4, 3, 1 at that time.
Young. Yeah.
But even having like a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old at the table right there, was just, I don't know, I look back and I think it was awesome. And then if I look at my whole career and what brought me to investing, I would say that lunch had almost no impact on that. But I'm so grateful that, you know, I almost get to say that I was there, and how like much, I know how much it means to both my dad and Guy that they were able to win that lunch and sit down, and they got a discount because it was much more expensive the year and every year after. But not transformative, just extremely grateful that I was given a seat at the table at such a young age.
But Meghna, if I can respond to Monsoon, I mean, obviously it's not fair in a way to ask 12-year-old Monsoon if it was transformative. But I would argue that from my perspective, I have no doubt that it was transformative for you and your sister, because you had a kind of a bifurcation point before that. You might have been the person who had lived her life knowing that her father went to lunch with Warren Buffett, and you were maybe doing whatever you were doing at school. And your inclusion in that lunch would have changed you in all sorts of profound ways that we can't even begin to imagine. And I know that I think that my children have attended the annual meeting twice. It's hard because obviously we live in Europe, but I actually look at that and I regret not bringing my children more often to the annual meeting, and I regret not encouraging broader members of my extended family who live in Houston or who live in Mexico to come to the meeting. I think it could have been transformative. I would tell you that I understand you were there in 2019, the Berkshire meeting, and that the fact that so many of you were able to make it, I think you can't underestimate what the impact of that is. And what I would tell you is that obviously having lunch with Warren Buffett for 3 hours is an incredibly intense dose of Warren Buffett, but it's only an intense dose if you're a child and you don't even realize that this is being washed over you. If you're like me and Monish, who'd been studying Warren deeply for a very, very long time. But I would say that going to the annual meeting is in many ways the same thing. I mean, we're there spending time with Warren Buffett, and yeah, we're not in the same room as him, but it's doing actually exactly the same thing. And you know, after the lunch, both Monish and I wrote up notes for each other, and we sent them to each other. And what do we do after the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting? We write up notes about what we've learned and conversations that we've had. So a way of thinking of what it was like to have lunch with Warren was maybe to think of what it was like to be at the annual meeting. The one thing that I would say is different, and again, I think that, you know, Monsoon, you're in a very unusual perspective because you don't know, you know, there are lessons that you learned around your father which it's funny because Monsoon and I often consider ourselves to be kind of friends/siblings, because we both learned these incredible lessons from her dad. And one of the things that was really brought home to me, and again was kind of transformative at the lunch, was that, and which one wouldn't get from the meeting, is that, this may sound so, somehow the to be in the room of somebody whose time is so valuable, who's so powerful. I mean, his decisions make him a huge difference, helped me to gain an understanding of how to talk to effectively rich and powerful people. And I think that I get quite frustrated because people try to, it's not as if I'm Mr. Warren Buffett or anything, but people try to access me, my brain, my time. And if they really understood what my environment was like, they'd realize that their expectations are unrealistic. And in that room at that lunch, I learned about how his mind works. And I learned a lot about how the minds of other rich and powerful people work. So that was just another lesson while I'm at it. And this may be an opportunity, Meghna, for you to pass the mic back to Monsoon. The only rich and powerful person I've really spent time with is Warren Buffett. Whereas Monsoon has hung out with Charlie Munger, Bill Gates, all sorts of people. You might want to ask her about that. But back to you, Meghna.
Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing all these nuggets. And yes, we will ask Monsoon about that. Before that, I'm just going to get Dineet to ask one question. Dineet, can we have you?
Thank you, Guy, and thank you, Monsoon, for gracing us and really giving us this wisdoms of pearls of wisdom by Warren Buffett. So my question here is, be a contrarian is Warren Buffett's mantra. How do you resist the temptation to buy overvalued stocks?
I'm pretty bad at that. I'll be honest, I think compared to other value investors, I will pay up for something nice. And I've watched all the investors 13F filings come out since, I don't know, a teenager. And I don't know if Guy knows this, but I always looked at his because we hang out. And I think I was always more drawn to just his holding style. And yeah, I think for me, I think you really have to pay up for something if it's an incredible business. But in terms of things that are super expensive that you really can't buy, that you really like, you just need to put in a watch list and come up with a price that you are comfortable buying at. And Munger says this. He says that Ben Graham walks into a candy shop and he buys the cheapest piece of candy. But Munger, when he goes to the candy shop, finds his favorite piece of candy, and he comes back every single day until it's the price he's comfortable paying. So you have to be patient, but I would say I'm not the best at it in practice.
No, this is great. Thank you, Monsoon. Guy, your views on this?
Yeah, well, the good news is that you don't have to be the best at it. And you can still do really well if you're not the best at it. In fact, most people aren't even trying. And the mere fact that one's trying, and I would tell you that the mere fact that you're asking the question already means that it's in your mind. So I would say that you have already a better orientation than most investors who are not even asking themselves the question, how do I avoid overpaying? How do I avoid buying into hype? So congratulate yourself on that. And you know, I would tell you, because there's an inner voice that I sense that is sort of saying, you idiot, you're not getting this right. You're thinking too much about these overvalued stocks. You're only going to end up buying them. So, you know, like shut down that, I would argue, shut down that inner voice a little bit that's kind of waiting for you to trip up, and understand that that's part of your humanity. But then I think that what I would want to ask you is, what in your environment is creating that? So if you're only paying attention, I mean, the obvious example would be all those people who are running after GameStop in the US. I don't remember, there was a kind of a certain group and there was a Discord channel and all of those things. Now, if you allow yourself to be plugged into that channel on a daily basis, it's just inevitable that you're going to be more likely to be thinking about, in that case, meme stocks. And so, you know, I would want to ask you, how consciously are you working on who you're talking to and what you're looking at? And for example, you know, Monsoon's father has a very unusual mind. really extraordinary, actually, because he's capable of looking at the most, what do you call it?
Obscure.
Hairy, I think, is one of the words that stock market analysts use. And he gets all excited and he wants to see the kind of the angle that actually makes it safe. So I know if I spend more time, and you can almost think of this as sort of like dials on a radio or something. If I dial up the time that I spend with somebody like Monsoon's dad, I'm going to get a counterexample to that. I would tell you, actually, Monsoon recently attended this investment conference that I have in Zurich. And this is kind of like the kind of thing that I'd say to Monsoon if we were just having a coffee together, maybe even South Indian coffee, who knows? Her father and I have a big debate on that. I'm an Italian coffee guy. But what was really shocking to me, and this might help you, Denise, is that Monsoon, there I am with this Value X crowd, and everybody in this Value X crowd is sort of considers themselves to be a value investor and consider themselves to be in the Warren Buffett style. But 2 years ago, we vote on, get about 50 presentations, then we do deep dives on a couple. Monsoon, 2 years ago, the deep dives were on Snowflake at 100 times revenues and on NFT crypto.
Yeah.
And so what is amazing to me that even in a group of self-styled value investors, the madness of the market takes over. So the work to actually put yourself in an environment where that doesn't impact you is, I think, if you don't actively work, well, if you like Monish, it's just sui generis. It's kind of a different way his mind works. But if you like the rest of us, if you like me, you have to actually actively work to create that environment that prevents you from lunging for that overpriced stock. Another short thing before I hand you back the floor is that I thought that it was enough to move to Zurich. It's not enough, because those meme ideas found me in Zurich, if you like. And actually, it's a daily work of what you decide to focus on. And I see Monsoon nodding, and I see you, Denise, nodding. So that's a good thing. Back to you, Denise.
Thank you so much. It's the mind over matter. Thank you so much. And Meghna, you can go ahead with the next question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can we have Garima for the next question, please?
Hello, Guy. Hello, Monsoon. So good to see you here. My question is based on the needs questions. I'm going to go forward with it. Do you think what is the most common mistake a value investor makes? Does it matter that he or she is a mature or a professional?
Yeah.
You want to go first, Guy?
Monsoon handing the floor. Thank you, Garima, for the question. I really, really appreciate it. And if anybody now or later, for my interest, wants to share a little bit about themselves, where they're calling from, or it's always fun to learn a little bit about you. So feel free. I just like to try and find a philosophical way of answering these questions. So in a way, I think that we're going to make all the mistakes, and we need to take decisions in such a way that we can survive given every single damn mistake that we're going to make. And none of us, not one person, goes into the world of investing hoping to make mistakes or wanting to make mistakes, but they're a fact of life. And I remember how I felt in the middle of the financial crisis with my portfolio down 45% and really feeling like I had failed the investors, because I was being paid, I was working full time, and there I was down 45% on my investments in the middle to late 2008, and I felt absolutely awful. I mean, I was not a non-professional investor. I'd invested my life in doing this, and to some degree that was the market, but there were some things that I looked at in my portfolio, and I said to myself, why on earth do you own this? And obviously, it's only when the tide goes out that you realize you were swimming naked, or what parts of your portfolio were swimming naked. So I think that what I would do in your shoes is, in a way, expect to make all the mistakes, even the ones that you didn't know you were making at the time you were making them, and to behave humbly and meekly as a result. And so what would be the worst thing? The worst thing would be the complete destruction of wealth, because then you're done and you may have to go do something else. The second thing is that something bad enough happens that you become so discouraged or so down on yourself that you end up not continuing. And I've learned so much recently about how survival is everything. Surviving in the game, just staying in the game. So I think that what it comes down to for me, before I go to Monsoon, is expect to make every single one in the book, everyone you read about and more, and run your portfolio appropriately. Think constantly about surviving all the mistakes that you're inevitably going to make, even the ones when you have the intention of not making any. If you come back at me, I'll try and get to some specific ones, but Monsoon.
Thank you.
I think for me, because I was 12 through 08, so other than seeing like my friends' parents lose their job, I didn't see much of an impact in 08. But I think the biggest mistake I see in most value investors is that they sell probably at the wrong time, too soon or too late, and it's hard to time, and you're not supposed to time. But um, um, yeah, I think that's a big one. And in terms of how to mitigate that, and I think like what Guy was talking about with like portfolio construction, something that I really like to do, and it comes from me being a political science major, is I like to stress test each position through, different world events that have already happened since history repeats itself. So what would happen to each name in my portfolio through something like a housing collapse, or for example, in India, we had the 2018 NBFC blow up, and I was making my investments in India, and normally one investment is 10% of the portfolio, but I had seen that and I had gotten nervous. So instead of making it just one company, I just split it between three. And so if the whole NBFC blow up happens again, I only lose 10% of the portfolio. But if something happens to just one company, then the portfolio destruction is much less. So I think also having checks in place are really important. And so one thing that I do is that I'll never put more than 10% of the capital at cost in a single name. So that way, if the whole thing gets destroyed, it's just 10%. But of course, when something like 08 happens and the market collapses, then it's inevitable. And Guy, it's okay. It's your investors invest with you because of the volatility they get. And so on, they get the highs on the high years and the low on the low years. And you were really just doing your job, and you were doing it with utmost respect. And, you're doing the best that the job could call for. It's a very risky and tough business, and it's important to recognize that, I think.
Monsoon, next time I'm having portfolio issues, I won't call your father up. I'll call you up.
Oh, good.
We'll go for a coffee.
He's more aggressive than me, I think. So,
Well,
yes.
for what it's worth, and he's kind of here on the call, even if in sort of spirit. If not, if it were not for him, none of us would be here. I would say if it were not for Monish, I certainly wouldn't have ended up co-bidding with him on the lunch with Buffett. I mean, he really convinced me to do that. But the reason why I bring him up is that some people are wired differently. And we have on this call, last time I checked, about more than 400 people. So there may be some people on this call who are wired differently, to say the way I'm wired, and for whom a portfolio down 50% doesn't mean anything to them. They're extremely calm and fine. I wasn't throwing my toys out the window or anything, but I was not a happy camper by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that one point that I'd like to make to you, Garima, and the group here, is that I find this concept of the inner voice and becoming aware of what the inner voice is saying to us. And so I think that in a lot of cases, the inner voice is saying, "You idiot, why did you make that mistake?" And because you can take all the precautions that Monsoon has talked about and other precautions in addition, and the markets have a way of finding your weakness, finding what you didn't pay attention to. And so I really do believe that those moments when you say, "You idiot, how could you not have ... It is so obvious." The real game gets going. And this is kind of something, if I can put it into everybody's mind, the real game gets going. This is the rubber hits the road. You really get started when there's been some kind of thing that would make me feel miserable, make me feel like I've screwed up, And now what am I going to do about it? Because that's when, in a way, our mettle gets tested and our capacity to make good decisions. And I would say that an enormous amount of the time, and I'll just leave you with this brief story. I don't know if you know the story, Monsoon. It is before I met your fathers, around 2008-9. So a company called Bioreference Labs had merged with National Health Laboratories. This was a deal sponsored by a very well-known biopharma called Hoffman La Roche. And they were providing bank financing for this deal, but it was to create one of the large reference labs in the United States, and it was more leverage than it ought to have been. And then the next thing that happens, and you know, Lou Simpson, of course, I followed Lou Simpson into this, and the company's new name is LabCorp of America. But now they trip a covenant on their debt, and the share price promptly falls from $8 to $2. And I had no pressure to sell. I didn't have any leverage. I didn't have any redemptions. It wasn't even that big a position in my portfolio. And but I have that voice saying, you idiot, you idiot, you idiot. And my mistake was I kept thinking about this position. I should have just, a concept that some people have is they freeze the position. They just say, I'm not going to touch this for another 2 years. Long story short, I sold it about $2 a share. If I'd have just, 10 years later, the thing is trading at $200 a share. I think split adjusted, it's now at $400 or $500 a share. If I'd have just done nothing, I would have done 20x on my money. If I doubled down, I would have done. So often the best thing to do is to do nothing. And just to come back to your original question, as I believe I remember it, is expect to make mistakes and expect to feel really miserable about them and idiotic about the mistakes that you made, and be prepared to deal with that. And that's where you kind of like the rubber hits the road and you'll become the hero of your own journey. Back to you, Garima.
So much. That was really insightful. Thank you, Meghna.
Great to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Be your own hero. Wow, guy. Really, now I'm feeling better about making mistakes. I won't beat myself up so much now after hearing what you said. Thank you for that.
Meghna, we're both going to be calling Monsoon. Is going to make us feel better.
Absolutely. Can we have Shweta actually for the next question, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Guy and Monsoon, for being here today. I'm Shweta from Mumbai. My question today is slightly different. Our mentor, Mr. Vishnu Dhanuka, draws inspiration from the Bhagavad Gita. The main teaching of the Gita is to focus on performing your work or your duties and detach yourself from the results. Please share your thoughts on this.
And I pause, Monsoon. I'm happy to go first or second, however you choose.
You can. I think you should take it first.
Let me translate that into plain English. Guy, I want to hear what you have to say, and I'll have
I'm
time
curious.
to think before you. Which is totally fine. Well, it made me think. I noted it down somewhere. It made me think of something from a sort of like sayings of the fathers, which is a book of Jewish wisdom, and we are not required to complete the task, but we cannot desist from our efforts to work at it, which is, I guess, is the same idea and slightly different. All these different wisdom traditions, ultimately, it's like the bedrock is the same wisdom, which is kind of really, really fun. I mean, what comes up for me when you say it is this idea of following a process. And we have to be fully cognizant and accepting that when we follow a process, the process may likely be the right process, a good process, that one that will endure over time and will be good over time, but we will sometimes get bad results from that process. And the last thing that we want to do if the process is a good one is change the rules of the game halfway through, because then we don't have anything to stand on. We don't know what's up and what's down. And so all I can do really is agree with it. I think it's a good thing. Yeah, I'll stop there and see where Monsoon goes.
I liked this. I like this question a lot. I think you just have to have faith in your conviction from the work you've done, but sometimes you are wrong and sometimes you've missed something specifically in investing. But I think the Bhagavad Gita really understands kind of like the perils of anxiety and what it can do to you in like a panic. And I think it's a great way to just be like, oh, I'm saying relaxed and um, just, sometimes it's good to chill, calm, and take things calmly. And I think in investing, some of my favorite, most successful investors I look up to, they don't work, 12, 14 hours a day. They work, in my opinion, a few hours a day, and they spend a lot of time on their hobbies and exercise and keeping their body and, mental health in check. And I think that's kind of really what it is do your work, keep your mind in a clear state, so that if something is wrong or whatnot, then you just go back and you examine, okay, what mistake have I made? Have I made a mistake, or should I keep the position? And I think it's important to just approach things with a clear mind.
I think, if we talk about process, what comes up for me, I love that phrase, by the way, I use it more and more. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but the thought that comes up for me is that I think it's John Wooden, who's a famous coach in the United States. He wrote a book about coaching where he talks about how when he gets I think it's basketball, the first thing he teaches them how to do is to put on their socks. And there's another book by a famous American general where he talks about making your bed. And I think that this idea of, sort of like breaking down how we want to live our lives into the smallest steps, or how we want to be as investors into the smallest steps, and just to, and to kind of like, to not spend all day just looking at the big picture, and certainly not spend all day looking at the share price or looking at the value of the portfolio. And I think that there's a famous statement by one of Warren Buffett's lieutenants, was that the answer to investing well was to read 500 pages a day. But I'll just give you some process steps that are kind of like, I think that make me feel safe. And just to, I don't know, I feel like it's relevant, but Monsoon, when I was in my third year at university, I had my politics tutor. I'd switched from law to PPE, and he was threatening to throw me out of the university because I wasn't taking my work very seriously. And I was super scared, and I followed a very strict timetable in order to kind of stay in university, where I basically treated my studies like a 9-to-5 job. At 9 o'clock, I was in the library, an hour from lunch, and out at 5. In a way, that is a process step. And some of the process steps that I have are, following, and I know that Monsoon's dad does this, or some version of this. I'll buy the shares of the company in a Charles Schwab account, and I very specifically don't allow them to send me the electronic copy of the company's filing. So I get a steady stream all the way to my office in Zurich of the filings of about 200 companies. And in each case, I own about one share of these companies. Not a large amount of money that I've got invested, but it's a simple process step where if I think about a company enough, I go into Charles Schwab and I just buy 1 or 2 shares, so I'll start receiving their annual reports. And then, they kind of arrive, and I'm looking to my left because there's a whole bunch of unread ones. I can go grab them and I'll take them home and I'll read them. But that's a kind of a process step. When one of the investee companies does a quarterly earnings call, then those papers appear. I sometimes read them, I sometimes don't. Monsoon, this will be fun. Here's another process step. Monsoon, when I read the conference calls, the printouts, I circle the names of anybody who asked a good question, and I connect them on LinkedIn by letting them know that I like the question that they asked. Now, often these people work at Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, wherever, Kotak Securities, but their jobs change, and they often appreciate the comment. And what I'm doing is I'm investing in that relationship, that in 5 years' time, when they're no longer at big white shoe Kotak Securities, don't want to talk to me, small investor, I'll have some kind of relationship with them. So this idea that when we talk about process, we can build it up from the most micro activities, if you like. So, and then trust the outcome. Just one more thing, and I love this analogy. Actually, it works much better in Europe, I guess, than it would in India. Is that I've seen investors from Wayne Cunniff talk about their sort of like each year they plant a vine and each year they make wine from that row of vines that they've planted, and in each year the wine is different. So, but we just keep planting the vines and we keep harvesting the grapes, and some years it's better, some years it's worse. So I'll stop there. I see Monsoon nodding. That means you have more wisdom to add. Go ahead, Monsoon.
Oh, I have no more wisdom to add. I'm just agreeing with you.
Oh, you're on mute,
Shweta, you're on
Sweta.
mute.
Love to present a copy of the Bhagavad Gita to both of you if you would allow us.
Oh, I'd be delighted. I'm embarrassed to tell you I haven't read it. And there's a subsection of the Bhagavad Gita. Well, no, there's the famous battle between Arjun and
Yes,
Krishna. There we go. I only know that because we have a good mutual friend whose son is called Arjun, but I know a little bit about that. That is what is that story called?
Yeah, that's
Mahabharata.
Gita is set up when
Mahabharata.
yeah,
Mahabharata. There we go. So I need, I read War and Peace a couple of years ago. If I can read that, I can read the Gita as well, So
It's more embarrassing. I haven't read it, so I would love a copy from Millennium Mams.
I didn't mean to do that, but yes, we have to send this across. Yeah. Over to you. Yeah.
Just a quick quip about Monsoon's dad, with whom we've both traveled sometimes together. Some of my best moments I will cherish forever, actually, is your father can quote from the Gita as well as he can quote from I guess it's not ghazals, it's the poetry under
Ramayana. It's the Ramayana. Or you're saying something else.
It's poetry. It's kind of like North Indian poetry, Sufi poetry.
Rumi. He likes Rumi.
Yeah, and he quotes it in, well, I guess it's Hindi/Urdu. It just blows me away. But there was another reason for me saying that, which just lost my mind. I'm sorry. Back to you, Sveta.
Thank you so much. I'll hand it over to Meghna for the next question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Sveta. Sorry, just Monsoon. I asked your father if he'd read the Gita, and he said he'd read the cartoon children's version.
Oh, as a child, yeah. He didn't give me a copy.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
So we'll definitely be sending a copy of the Bhagavad Gita to both of you. And thank you for sharing your nuggets about process steps and bedrock as being the same. It's actually universal. I totally agree. Now I'd like to invite Nidhi for the next question. Nidhi Kanoy, she's from Mumbai as well, where Monsoon is right now.
Oh,
Hi,
nice.
Monsoon. I'm glad to hear that you're in Mumbai. Hi, Guy. I'm hoping we'll see you in Mumbai soon sometime.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to go back to Meghna's first bit about your lunch. And we at Millennium Mams and most of us are housewives would hope to be able to gather that much money to be able to afford the lunch. But I'd like to ask you to share 3 mantras that both of you all have incorporated for yourselves from Mr. Buffett, Mr. Munger, and obviously Mr. Pabrai.
I'll go first, Guy.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's quite quick. It's the two big ones are no self-pity and no envy. I think I've been raised with that. I can't even remember how young I was when it was first mentioned, and different examples and how it was showcased, and how like different challenging moments in my life as a teenager, as a student, as an analyst, as a professional investor, as a friend, it's been extremely important. And the third one would be the importance of an inner scorecard, and to not just to really only compete with yourself, to be the best version of yourself. I think are the three most, for me, the three most important. Yeah.
Yeah. And, to the first one of no self-pity, which I'm going to disagree with in a second, but, this weekend, the Warren Buffett's letter came out. And I mean, he has every reason to feel and want to feel devastated by that. I mean, it's an extraordinary loss for him. And I don't know how he's dealing with that in private, but you don't see any of that in the letter. There's no self-pity. There's no sort of longing, none of those things. There's a celebration, and he moves on. But what comes up for me when Monsoon says the no self-pity is that I just think that there are events that happen in life where to assume that we can just have no kind of feeling crushed and sort of move on with it, it implies for me that you what I've learned about grieving, and we have 400 people in this room. Inevitably somebody's lost a loved one recently. Somebody's had a diagnosis of something that they don't like. And that's what happens when you get 400 people in a room. And the thing that I've learned is, so the way you ensure that you don't have self-pity, say wallow in it forever, is you create a space for it. You allow yourself a certain space for doing that. And by the way, that's what memorials are. That's what graveyards are for. And so no self-pity doesn't mean that you don't take a moment to say, this sucks. I'm so sorry for what happened. This is a real blow to me. And so, and in a sense, I'm responding because I've heard this idea from Monsoon's dad, and I'm really responding to her father. So, yes, we shouldn't live a life of self-pity. We're all extraordinarily fortunate to be around, but I think that, let's face it, life can deal us some really, really horrible blows, unexpected blows that we do not deserve. And yes, we should not have self-pity, but we should create a good process for responding to those. And that allows, you don't have to feel great the whole time and be in denial of the horrible reality. Having said that, I promise you that if Monsoon's dad, or maybe Monsoon will come back to me and say, no, you're absolutely full of the proverbial and you're absolutely wrong. And that is just your stupid bleeding heart guy. And life should be, you should see it differently. But I'll just give you, I believe it's 3. We'll see how it goes. But I think that, and look, there are just so many. So the way I take the question is, what are the 3 that come up for me right now? And one that I think has been, and I think that what's really fascinating about this famous launch is that 99% of the lessons that I've learned from Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are not so much from what they said to me or anybody else. It's from observing their behavior. One of the things that I see Warren Buffett doing is that he will never make a decision for short-term expediency. So you get a lot of situations in life where somebody will come up to you and say, just this once. It happens if you've got children, just this once. I know you shouldn't do it just this once. And I've seen him multiple times give us the reason why he's not doing something, why he has to say no, is I'm sure you can understand if I were to do this every time. It's why he never bids at an auction, for example, because he knows that even if this particular auction is going to be a great auction for him, over a lifetime of bidding at auctions, he's going to end up worse off than he just chooses not to bid at all. And so that kind of thinking, each behavior. So I guess, and it just blows me away that he gets this. So the famous book, Atomic Habits, each action that we take is our vote for our future selves. And one of the things I've learned from Warren is that he lives in a world where he sees those actions not in terms of the individual actions. He sees them as a kind of like, if I do this action, I'm doing it subject to a rule for consistently behaving this way across a lifetime, and what will be the result of behaving this way across a lifetime. And that simple distinction, I think, has made an enormous difference for him. So that would be my first kind of principle or mantra. The second principle or mantra for me is that Nidhi, it comes up for me right now. So, maybe tomorrow I'd think of 3 different ones. Is this idea that, I mean, one way of putting it is we always meet people again. You never meet somebody once, no matter who it is. And so treat every person as if you're going to be around them forever, and they're going to be around you. And you're going to have to sort of like deal with the consequences of the way you've treated them. And another way of putting that is sort of like a lot of these ideas flow in and out of each other. So there's kind of no clear delineating boundaries, I guess. But you can always tell somebody to go to hell tomorrow, if you like. And something that I don't know how much this is just me or if I am attributing it to Warren, or I really do feel like, if you take the Christian tradition that when you die, you get judged at the pearly gates of whether you get to go into heaven or not. Every person you've met will be there casting a vote. And so, sort of like I've seen Warren bend over backwards to treat people who have absolutely no use to him anymore well. And so, you know, at these Berkshire Hathaway meetings, when Monsoon's been hanging out with her dad at the Charlie Munger dinner, I've been hanging out many of the years with Debbie Basanik at the Debbie Basanik dinner. And at her dinner, you meet people who, like there's one person who's a former trust officer, hasn't been a trust officer for either Warren Buffett or anybody he knows for more than a decade, but he just deeply values the relationships that he has with these people, and he wants them to feel valued and special. And so that really, really does inspire me. The idea of, now it's hard because, as Margaret Thatcher has said, if you care about what every single person thinks about you, even the last person will be able to have control over you. So at some point, you have to sort of say, well, I accept that they're not going to like what I just did. I'm going to do it. But somehow that sort of really motivates me. And there was a third one, but I think I've talked enough, so I'll stop. Two's enough. Back to you, Nidhi. Or maybe Monsoon, you want to come back to me on the pity thing. I don't know.
I think I liked your response. It was totally okay. But I think it's helped me stay focused on what's important to me. Yeah.
Thank you. That was really nice. Back to you, Meghna.
Thank you,
Really,
Nidhi.
I'm actually mesmerized hearing the mantras you all both have given and shared. We are nearly at the end of our session, but before we have our VOT, I would really request both of you all to give some words for all our members, you know, some words of encouragement or whatever you feel like, give some message for Millennium Mams organization.
And now we get another negotiation, Monsoon.
I can go. No, I'll go first. I think that Joel Greenblatt said this, but women are probably, of the two genders or the many genders, the best gender for investing because we are the most long-term patient, empathetic of the two genders. And I really feel like especially in India, you see it with the micro lending that all those companies do, that when they try to give like small loans to men, they, pardon my French, but they piss it off on alcohol and all kinds of other wasteful things, and they don't think about their family and survivability and long-term thinking. And women are naturally built for that. So we have so many natural skills that I think we're talented at. And if you are, and the one thing I really admired about this session is different women asked questions. And I think even being like a girl and being confident and taking opportunities to speak up and participate in a forum is huge. And I was scanning through the gallery and I was honestly touched at how intently everyone was listening Guy and myself speak. And I just think you're all in a great place, and do your best to speak up, participate, and to push other women forward. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Monsoon. Really encouraging words. Now, can we have some words from Guy as well, please?
Yeah, thank you, Monsoon. They're lovely, and I have to tell you, I hope you don't mind. Anyway, one of the benefits of me meeting Monish Pabrai and ending up having lunch. That before the lunch with Warren Buffett, I'd met Monish maybe once at a conference. In fact, on a trip to Australia, I specifically routed myself via Los Angeles in order to be able to drop off and say hi, because I felt like before this damn lunch, at least we could have met more than once, which is just interesting. And so I'm going to do, so in my response, sort of final words, I'm going to do a little bit of possibly projection. So my wife is Mexican, or this is hilarious. So again, just whenever I mention Monsoon, I don't know if you know this, when I mention your father in conversation, I say my Indian friend Monish, and my son, Isaac, he starts saying, why only when you mention Monish do you have to say your Indian friend? It's like, what kind of whatever. Anyway, so then Monish, he makes fun of me because my wife she speaks perfect English, all those things. She was born in North Carolina, but she grew up in Mexico, and I see her father's Mexican, and all of her childhood friends are Mexican. She grew up in a place called Monterey. And I'm kind of like, through her, deeply familiar with Mexican society, which I think is very, very different to American society. Now, funnily enough, in the United States, there's strong feminism, but when I compare what is going on in the United States. And I don't want to claim that things are perfect in the United States for women, but when I see what's going on in Mexico, it is utterly ghastly for me, because I feel like there are so many ways in which women are undermined, and it's not necessarily the obvious ways, because in law, the laws kind of like are written such that men and women are equal. And it gets my gillet. The thing that gets my gillet the most is that when I try to talk to my wife or to her sister about the multiple ways in which women are undermined in Mexico, over and above pay differences for the same work, opportunities at colleges, whether you're male or female. I mean, you could go through 1,000 different things. But even worse is that I feel like my wife and her sister, with whom I have the most of these conversations, they don't even see it. They don't even see the kind of, and so, you know, I cannot see it in India. I think there's some ways in which I see that Indian women are extraordinarily well educated and empowered, but I also read in the press all sorts of things that are utterly horrible. And so I think that what I want to tell this group is, congratulations on banding together, because I've no doubt that banding together in this way empowers you. And I think that that's a really, really smart move. And I guess what I want to say is that if you have an underlying feeling that something is unjust, or that you've been given short shrift by another male-dominated society, you're probably right. And I can't redress that balance, but I am supporting you, and I'm with you, and I care very much about that balance being redressed. So I'll just leave it at that, I guess. I hope it's kind of like rambly, but I think you got my idea.
Thank you so much, both Guy and Monsoon, for the really motivating and uplifting words that you all have just shared for our organization. We are totally out of time now, so I would like to invite Avni Barwale from our Mumbai chapter committee to give the vote of thanks.
Thanks, Meghna. On behalf of all of us at Millennium Mams, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Guy Spier and Ms. Monsoon Pabrai for your enlightening discussion and invaluable insights shared with us today. Today's discussion has been nothing short of inspiring. Guy, through your experiences and lessons learned shared with us today, you have not only illuminated the beauty of being honest to yourself, but have also encouraged us to embrace integrity and long-term thinking in our lives and financial endeavors. Likewise, Monsoon, your innovative approach to investment and life, and your thought today that do your work and keep your mind in a clear state makes us think more about ourselves. To conclude, I want to thank both of you once again for generously sharing your time, expertise, and wisdom with us today. I would also like to take a moment to thank our mentors, Mr. Bishnu Dhanuka and Mr. Sanjay Bhuvania, for giving us this platform that allows its members such rich interactions with stalwarts in the field. Thank you very much.